In a season that continues to surpass even its own incredible standards, you join us here for round 8 of the Season 4 GT3 EU IMB World Series League here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And Motorsport is a circuit of challenges and undulation and should definitely provide a mass of action. It's myself, Zach Sweeney, and David Christie to talk you through. And well, David, it's a circuit that neither of us are particularly too experienced with by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, looking at it at least sort of in passing and what I've been able to sort of scrounge out on YouTube and the racing action that you get from here, it does look to be quite a challenging circuit, even if it doesn't look to be that case at face value.
Yeah, very good evening, Zach. It is. It's one of those tracks, I think, that's a bit of a dark horse. It's one of those that maybe doesn't roll off the top of the tongue, maybe the likes of Sebring or the likes of Circuit of the Americas, but it is a very, very essential part of the motorsport scene over in North America. Fantastic track. I think this is going to cause a lot of issues for the drivers tonight. We've seen how they really struggle at these high speed, high technical circuits, and certainly given that they're a little bit friendly, shall we say, with each other, Zach, I think it's going to be a very interesting night for sure.
The last time we were in Canada with the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and what a couple of races we had there. So fingers crossed the Canadians can continue to deliver. Speaking of this season so far, we're going to take a look at the championship standings. In the pros, it's still Neil Butler that leads the way, only 8 points clear of Stuart Reynolds, who has been a very consistent driver over the course of this season, been there or thereabouts through every single race. Albin Kjellberg there in P3, a further 13 points back on Stuart Reynolds. Chris Chatterton and Arias Yumantas round off your top 5. But still, a lot to play for in the entirety of pros, as you can see how close it is throughout the midfield and that fight for first. Coming into the Pro-Ams, and still it's Lucas Romano versus John Williams at the front of the field. Only 7 points separating our top 2. There have been rivals for pretty much this entire season, jockeying for position, always going for gold between the pair of them, and well, only one of them is going to reign supreme come the end of the season. Stuart Viner's there in P3, not too far off, so could definitely be a dark horse come the season end, particularly if Lucas Romano and John Williams continue some misfortune. Liam Ahern and Michael Patterman round off your top 5. Not too far back there is Franco Peugeot, Jeremy De Boiver, Chris Thacker, Felix Bell, and our reigning champion of Dean Timms there in P10. Finally, we come to the AMS. Connor Botting, Lewis Bube, the Prime Motorsport teammates, still out in front, battling for that championship lead. Now only 4 points between the two of them. Lewis Bube on a run of form really has been delivering and has really been trying hard to close that gap to his teammate. Doug Bounce in P3 there rounds off the fight for the championship, but you have to say it is pretty much a two-horse race in terms of the championship fight in the AMS. You've also got James Slates and Tony Allbrown round off your top 5, I should say, for the AMS. But yeah, we've only got what, 6 races of this season left, David. It's gone by in a flash, but honestly, you look back and there's so many memorable moments to think back on.
There absolutely is, Zach. I'm thinking back to some of the slightly more eventful races that we've had this season, and weirdly, and I don't know if you will be able to back me up on maybe next week or so, but for sure, when I've been looking at things, it seems like the first half of the season went so quietly, and it's been the second half of the season we've had all the fireworks.
Yeah, well, fireworks indeed. And we come to the grid and procedure for round number 8. Race number 1, Albin Kjellberg, the Swede, takes pole position ahead of Kenny Harriman, with Callum Beeman and Neil Butler rounding off your second row. Stuart Reynolds rounds off the top 5 with all 3 of our championship contenders inside the top 5. Chris Chatterton will line up alongside there in 6th with Kieran Smart and Andy D. Miller, your 4th row. Thomas Reiter and Yumantas round off the top 10, with Harry Wills and Louis Gardner, your top 12. Looking beyond that is the Pro-Am grid, I should say. Lucas Romano, the Belgian, takes pole position. His qualifying pace is on fire. It's very big shock there not to see John Williams inside the top 10, but Dean Timms will join Lucas Romano on the front row. Dave Lamink P3 with Stuart Viner's P4. Then comes Ashraf El Haddad in P5 with Jeremy De Boiver alongside him in 6th. Michael Patterman P7, Liam Ahern just there in behind in 8th. Francois Peugeot and Chris Thacker your top 10, with Edward Packer and Alex Bomberg rounding off the 6th row of the grid as they initiate themselves for the formation lap. And John Williams right at the back of the Pro-Am field there. Really big shock for him, considering not only his race pace, but also his qualifying pace has been phenomenal. Dirk Bouts takes pole in the AMS ahead of Jasper Tjarks with Lewis Bubia and James Slates 3 and 4. Connor Botting rounds off the top 5. He'll be wanting to make up some ground relative to his teammate. Nevada Boyver will join him there on the third row in P6 with Kurt Van Hoenacker and Greg Schill P7 and 8 respectively. Johan Reigns and Alistair Hatcher your top 10 with Gus Franken rounding off the AM field. A relatively small AM field compared to this season. They're in P11. They're underway for the formation lap then here, David, and well, quite a couple of surprises, it must be said, in qualifying, particularly the Pro-Ams with John Williams.
Absolutely. I mean, haven't we seen John do so well throughout the entirety of this season? And see him at the back makes me think that something's either happened during qualifying or potentially during some of the previous races. Qualifying bans isn't something that we can comment on throughout any of the season so far, but certainly it does look very strange to see him at the back of the grid. And looking at those championship standings again, you know, things like this is the little moments that really make or break these seasons. And I think here at Motorsport Park with 2.6 miles of a track here, I think that he is definitely going to have his work cut out trying to peel through the field here. What I would say is that if anything goes wrong with that pro field, I am very afraid for the rest of that field.
Yeah, for sure. And looking at the track again at face value, just looking at the twists and turns, you would expect there's not really many opportunities to find a way through. You really do have to qualify well here. Though the undulation, the lack of runoff, the challenges of Motorsport could definitely bite some people, and then that could be the causation of John Williams' resurgence back up through the field. Only time will tell, though. We put 25 minutes on the clock. A sprint race straight to the checkered flag here for race 1 of round number 8 of the IMB World Series League GT3, the EU edition. For season number 4, we round through the S's and then they'll go into the final corner. The safety car peels off into the pit lane in the right-hand side. We'll see more of that in race number 2. Albin Kjærberg, Kenny Harriman, your front row. You can see the black BMW on the right-hand side. The lights turn on. The lights quickly go out. We are underway here in Canada as they dwindle their way down through turn 1, through the right-hander. Already Callum Beeman on the offensive there, up in a second place in that Porsche. Albin Kjærberg, a perfect launch. Bit of a carnage in the background. We look at the Pro-Ams to get underway. We ride on board with Alex Bomberg as the Pro-Ams also hurdle their way through the undulation of turn number 1. You dip downhill, and here's for the AMS. Dirk Bouts, Jasper Tjarks, your front row. We are go for the AMS as well, and it seems to be a pretty tentative start. Dirk Bouts lead from Jasper Tjarks again as they run their way through turn 1. The swoop through as you really have to hug the apex and get the run up towards 3 and 4, side by side between James Slates and Lewis Bouvier just in the background for the fight for the podium. But so far, a relatively clean start.
It absolutely is here, Zach, and all the chaos. We completely missed the Pro-Am start, but Lucas Romano still is in the lead, but he's having some major connection problems at the front of the field there. Dean Timms in that second place there. We did see right at the back there, Thomas Reiter actually spinning out from that Pro class just in front of Harry Wills, unassisted, it looked like, through into that final corner there. But as it is, a fairly reasonable start for everyone.
Yeah, and fingers crossed that continues side by side between a couple of cars. This is Liam Mahone trying to hang on to, or trying to attack for P7 versus Michael Patterman, the 75 Porsche just in front of him. This is what happened to Kurt Van Hoenacker and David Christie.
I've jinxed it already, Zach.
Why? Ewan, we need you here every week because David Christie is just a curse looming over Kurt Van Hoenacker. Fortunately, Juha Huutonen isn't driving today, otherwise we might have a couple of issues. This is actually round the outside for the lead of the race for Callum Beeman, side by side between Albin Kjærberg. This is brilliant stuff. The Porsche soaring his way up into the race lead. Albin Kjærberg forced to concede. They might come back at him as they run their way in towards Moss Corner. Probably the key overtaking opportunity on the circuit. You loop round for a double apex, but I think Callum Beeman is going to be able to consolidate that lead versus Albin Kjærberg. Brilliant stuff as John Williams finally manages to get himself up a place against Alex Bomberg, but this is very slow progress considering he only has 25 minutes to get it done.
Yeah, he's really not making the moves that he thought he would be able to as Kurt Van Hoenacker. That's another moment straight into the entry of pit lane. That's me, that is. I can absolutely identify with that amount of pain right now, and that's going to be the leaders just coming up. Talking of leaders, Dirk Bouts in the lead of the AM class just now. He's away and home and dry right now, nearly 2 seconds to the good of James Slates right now, so a decent little lead that he's got, but Lucas Romano's still under pressure from Dean Timms here. But that lead up at the front for the pros just so thin. Albin Kjærberg really wants to take that position back.
He really does. Looking in the AM standings, we did actually see Lewis Bouvier pulling himself into the pit lane, which is very uncharacteristic for his race ones. Over the course of this entire season, he has not finished outside of the top two. It's been second, first, second in race ones for Lewis Bouvier. He's been on such a good run of form that it's so uncharacteristic to see him in the pit lane here for race one. And, well, for Connor Botting, his teammate, his championship rival also, that is going to be music to his ears to know that his main rival is out of contention, at least in race one. This is exactly what happened, making contact with the 72 BMW and finds himself hurtling towards the barrier, and that is some very hefty damage and a very, very bent rear wing as well, it must be said. So misfortune has struck already at Motorsport, and well, what is it with Canadian circuits and championship contenders getting a bit of bad luck?
Yeah, if you thought I was a jinx, wait till you come to the Canadian circuits, as we see Dean Timms losing a position to Stuart Wyness here. This is what makes it so exciting coming into these final couple of rounds here, Zach, is the fact that everything is still well and truly up in the air. We say that as commentators all the time, and 9 times out of 10 we're just desperately trying to inject some sort of excitement and enthusiasm into the championship. But really, as it stands with this one, I mean, God knows what is going to happen in these final couple of races. That you get the feeling that it's something that we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's our job to, as you say, invoke enthusiasm and make things hyper, but we don't need to. We don't need to try for this season. It's done it all itself. It's written its own narrative, and it's been such a good story to see unfold, and it's not over just yet. We are in the final couple of pages, but we're not just there, and we might see still some surprises. This is what happened to Yamantas going through uphill in towards Moss Bend. This is turn number 5, just going in way too deep, I think. The corner itself does lend itself to that sort of mistake. You're turning while also under the braking, and the forces under the car, it just doesn't want to cope with that. You can't brake and demand some lateral force of the tyres as well. They just get overwhelmed, and that is exactly what happens. No amount of ABS or traction control is going to save you from that sort of error. It is one of those you really just have to be very sensitive through. So you can't exactly blame Yamantas for that one. It was an easy mistake to make, but around a circle like Motorsport, it's mistakes like that that are definitely gonna make the difference.
It absolutely is, and there's all hell kicking off as Francois Perdreau has went into the wall very hard indeed. John Williams has been caught up in that. We saw John trying to make his way through here, so let's see what happened with Francois Perdreau. Looks like it might be an unassisted then, because he's well ahead of the car behind. Is this going to be a move into the corner there? That's John Williams. Oh my good lord. In fact, that was the 8 of John Williams just behind there, so oh, you hate to say it. That car is done. It's toast. Yeah,
that is not great, to say the least. That is, as Lewis McLeod would say, suboptimal.
Suboptimal, yes.
Suboptimal. I'm gonna nick that. You should definitely get a trademark for it or something. Gus Franken as well, having a bit of an off. Oh, ouch.
Oh,
and he goes for a lovely little air show as well to spin himself around. Not quite to the extent we saw from Andy Miller at Watkins Glen, but definitely some form of acrobatics going out of the final corner. And down the pit straight, just wallied himself into the pit barrier, which is interesting physics, to say the least, as to how he found himself skyrocketing to the moon. But yeah, once again, we've seen a championship protagonist having some misfortune. We saw it with Lewis Bouvier in the AMs. Now we're seeing it with John Williams in the Pro-Ams. You have to say, whose turn is it going to be in the Pros? This is some Final Destination type stuff I'm feeling.
I'm getting the impression these guys are going to be looking forward to these new GT3 overhauled physics coming out next week. That's what I'm thinking, or at least 2 weeks time, because it's the brand new season that they come out. So I think that they'll be very much looking forward to that. It's completely realistic. You've got to say, Zach, we see that all the time in real life GT3 racing cars getting launched 30 foot up into the air. It's it's just part and parcel of being a GT3 driver, isn't it?
Parachutes to custom, pretty much. You have to have one on board. You have to have one on your back, actually. It works as good back support in the cockpit, but also a good emergency ejector seat button as well, if you do need it. We cut back to all seriousness. Ashraf El Haddad looking to the outside of one of the final corners on Jeremy De Boiver. He's going to have a bit of a look. Does the Twisted Racing Team Porsche to the outside, quickly becomes the inside for the next left-hander, and there comes De Boiver, the Belgian, back up the inside, potentially for the final corner as they ebb and flow their way through. Now exiting down the pit straight again. They are still going to emerge barely. Well, actually, no, not side by side anymore. Michael Patterman also getting himself involved in that Porsche to the inside of turn 1, and De Boyver very quickly has turned from being in P5 down to P7 in the snap of his fingers. Oh no, he comes back up the inside of turn 2, and they come together, they collide, and they find themselves into the grass. And well, Jeremy De Boyver has found himself a lot worse off than that.
Oh my lords, and of course I cut away because Didier Vlaminck has a bit of a moment. I went to have a look at that, and then all of that just absolutely went off, didn't it? Let's see what happened there as they were side by side contact through the corner, and yeah, not the best really.
Just an ouch, big F. As the cool kids would say, again coining a term for Lewis McLeod, because I love doing it. It's great. He's won a semi for a reason, ladies and gents, so I'm going to use everything I can because he's not here and he can't tell me off. Michael Patterman going off, just running himself to the exit of of one of the corners, maybe turn 2, I believe. He obviously must have served a bit of damage in that contact with Jeremy De Boyver, and that might have Strickland. We come back to the the AMs. Well, complete opposite. There's Harry Wills having a bit of a Harry Wills moment off the exit of turn 1. He's in the pursuit of Louis Gardner, who himself runs a little bit wide going through the sweeper of 3. But Harry Wills down there in P10 trying to fight for P9 at the moment, and also having a look at the fight for P1. It's now Callum Beeman versus Neil Butler. Albin Kjellberg 5.3 seconds back.
That is peculiar to say the least, so we need to find out what on earth has happened to Albin Kjellberg. So I will get on that immediately.
As you should. David Christie, ladies and gents, top quality broadcaster. And trying to deliver on what's happened to the Swede, who really is going to get a taste to Canadian circuits in towards turn number 5, and he's done it all by himself. Dips a couple of wheels onto the gravel, done well to save it, done well to keep it up the barrier, but not quite enough to retain second place in this race. He emerged side by side with the number 16 of Chris Chatterton, but unfortunately for him, it's having to settle into P5 and still opportunity to move forward. He's got Stuart Reynolds less than a second in front of him for P3, but you have to say this now is Callum Beeman's race to lose.
It really, really is, and the thing with that is that how often have we seen the driver being in that position for no reason whatsoever, just not able to take advantage of it and end up, you know, some sort of incident, some sort of accident. Fingers crossed. I mean, 15 minutes should be fairly straightforward to try and hold on to it normally. But then when you've got the likes of Neil Butler, Stuart Reynolds and Chris Chatterton at your heels, nothing's really all that straightforward. Just like Stuart Wyness down in Pro-Am right now, ahead of Lucas Romano, Dean Timms, and you've got a fourth car there, but that's not for Classic Series Humantis trying to do a recovery drive here.
Yeah, Stuart Vines has got his work cut out for him. He's got championship leader of Lucas Romano just in behind, and the reigning AM champion of Dean Timms also breathing down his neck. And while Dean Timms hasn't exactly been his season hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows, he's still got a good knack for negotiating as the pretender circuits here on iRacing. He's up there in P3 after starting a lowly sort of P10 or P11 sort of area here in the Pro-Am. So he's really made his way forward quite efficiently and could definitely still be an upset for the race lead. Up in front, we see Albin Kjellberg up the inside of Chris Chatterton, who gets forced off the road, nearly into the barrier, manages to keep it going, but he's going to lose a couple of places. Kieran Smart and Kenny Harriman both find their way through. This is the move here from Dean Timms almost on Lucas Romano, and this is allowing Stuart Vines to maybe just break away just a little bit. But that's the thing for Lucas Romano, when you're second place in a 3-car fight for the lead, it's so difficult because you're almost forced into attacking. It's either kill or be killed in some senses.
It absolutely is, and did my eyes deceive me, or did it look like 40 cars just coming down the hill at turn 3 there? Fantastic sight here at Canadian Motorsport Park here. Brilliant little circuit. It really doesn't offer the drivers any respite whatsoever. It's this constant stop-start affair, which means that there's plenty of overtaking opportunities. And here comes Dean Timms then on Lucas Romano. Romano down in that second place there, and as you said, I think Linus just getting a little bit of a gap here, because here comes Dean Timms onto the tail end of that car in front of Lucas Romano, and the number 39 gets away with it just now. But then also with Dean Timms, he's going to have to watch out because he's got Arius Humantis just behind him, as I believe Harry Wills has done Harry Wills.
That can mean a plethora of things. That can be he's
No,
just won the race.
Harry Wills has done a Harry Wills. That
He's
means
he's done a Harry Wills. There we go. That is a Harry Wills if I've ever seen one. But yeah, no, Harry Wills can mean a number of things. It can mean something like this, running side by side between Thomas Reiter through turn 1, very, very cleanly between the Porsche and the Mercedes. Harry Wills on the right-hand side now as they climb their way up and then dip their way back down around this roller coaster of a circuit here at Motorsport. And Thomas Reiter is ahead of Harry Wills for the time being as they head their way in towards Moss at turn 5. But we can see that Harry Wills just having to concede that place. This is what happened to Yomantas through turn 1, getting a little bit wide. All off he goes, bang, ouch. That car came to a very, very sudden stop.
Yeah, he's going to want to see the infield doctor after that one. And Stuart Wyness and Dean Timms have come together as well. Would you believe it? While in the case of while we're watching that, so we have to have eyes in the back of our heads in this broadcast. We
have to have so many eyes in so many places. This is what happened to Stuart Wyness. All around he goes in a bit. Oh, and he's joined.
Formation spinning.
Yeah, beautiful.
So there wasn't actually contact.
No, definitely not. They just made the same mistake at the same time. Synchronized spinning. Nice bit of ballet for you here. These guys can do it all. They can race cars and do a bit of ballet at the same time. Brilliant. They should be a stunt driver at Disney World, I think, is the career path for them. But yeah, we come back to how they stand. It's Callum Beeman that leads away from Neil Butler, Stuart Reynolds, Albin Kjellberg and Kieran Smart, your top 5. And you can see there's Stuart Reynolds in that Mercedes. He's been hammered by Albin Kjellberg. This is Andy Miller in the Ferrari, having a bit of an off at T1. And well, Motorsport, I knew it was going to be a difficult circuit, but I didn't quite expect it to be to this level.
All right, there we go. Now Harry Wills has done Harry Wills.
Yeah, he's really showing off now. He's showing his full range of talent is Harry Wills, and I'll try not to be too mean because he's in charge and I don't want to lose my job. But anyway, he's running through downhill, through the right, up in towards Moss, and in a bit. Again, we're seeing the same mistakes. It's not like people are making a variety of different mistakes. We're seeing that mistake at turn 1, we're seeing that mistake at turn 5, but what we haven't seen is a very dodgy rejoin like we saw there from Harry Wills.
Well, we'll just we'll glaze past that one. And to be fair, commenting about Harry and his driving, again, he takes it tongue-in-cheek. He's usually, when we speak to him off-air, he's the first one to criticise his own driving. But the thing is that we often explain just how talented it is. So a lot of it is frustration and disappointment from our point of view as commentators, because we've seen how blisteringly fast he can do things with that car that I've never seen possible. The way that he drives it on the ragged edge, unfortunately, one of the symptoms and one of the byproducts of driving it that sort of aggressively is sometimes it'll just not go your way. Like you pointed out there, we've seen that time and time again going into that corner where you have the car unbalanced and it just sweeps the back end out. You go a little bit wide, it understeers off, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be spinning.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you're very right in saying we've seen a lot of good stuff from Harry Wills, particularly the standout is Monza last season. He drove fantastically. I think it was a second and a first he got over the course of that race event. He really can show off when it goes his way. Unfortunately for him, 9 times out of 10, it often doesn't, which has been the theme for a number of drivers this season, so he's not the only one in that boat. But anyway, we have to focus on this fight for third because Callum Beeman and Neil Butler flew off into the distance between the pair of them. Neil Butler is trying to close the gap, but not really closing the gap as much. The last lap 13.9 for Callum Beeman, 13.7 for Neil Butler, so only a couple of tenths of a second. It's going to take quite a while for Neil Butler to close that gap. However, it is very interested in the fight for third, also very interested in that fight amongst the AMs. But Stuart Reynolds, all aboard the Stuart Reynolds train, ladies and gents, because he's got Albin Kjellberg, Kenny Harriman, Kieran Smart and Chris Chatterton all in tow, ready to try and attack the Mercedes, who currently is running second place in the championship. Currently third to Neil Butler's second, which is going to be a couple of points lost, but at least he's in front of Albin Kjellberg.
And a brilliant effort nonetheless. We've got 5 cars all fighting for that same position as Reynolds has a little look to the inside there. Kjellberg fancies getting that position there. The problem is, and we've said this time and time again, so much so that I'm kind of boring myself with it, the fact that you're in between a rock and a hard place here, because for Kjellberg, he does want to take that position, but how hard does he want to push for it? Because, you know, if he gets it wrong, then suddenly he's got Kenny Hermans and Kieran Smart, who are looking very, very happy to take that position from them as well. In fact, even Chris Chadderson there.
Yeah, his initiative is forced at the moment. Like we've said, when you're fighting second in a multiple car train, you have to make something happen, because if not, you are going to sink through the pack, if not, and you really have got to be careful of that happening. This is a fight amongst the Pro-Ams between Didier Vlaming and Ashraf Al-Haddad, the fight for second. Oh my word, off into the barrier goes the 72 BMW through turn one. That was a very hefty snap, and found himself into the tyre barrier very, very quickly indeed. Unfortunately, it wasn't Lucas Romano who's leading the way. We're going to take another look as to what happened. This is Jasper Sharks, the 72, just getting it a little bit squirrely, and then bam, tried to correct it, and the car gripped up. That's the thing though, once you lose a little bit of grip, you've got TC to try and help bring the car back. So when he snapped, the car had already sort of self-corrected itself. So in doing that sudden correction, the car already had the grip to then be able to go to the left, which caused that snap back. Which there was nothing that Jasper Sharks could have done. You can't predict that. It's just one of the unfortunate byproducts of having that small little twitch that sent him so quickly into the barrier. But yeah, that is a pretty hefty incident.
It's like that old Sillet Bang advert, isn't it? Bang, and the car is gone. Literally, you can't even think about it. You just, when you're behind the wheel of something like that, when it happens, it's done before you've even got any chance. That initial sort of correction that he had when the car snapped would have been pure instinct from Jesper Sharks there, before they even realised what was going on. And of course, your car's straight into the wall. The runoff area is almost non-existent here at Motorsport, so it's kind of game over before he even realises. And it's such a shame, because 9 times out of 10 when you take a head-on impact like that, it's going to be a very, very severe bit of damage to the engine there, Zach.
Always is. This could be a move from Albin Kjellberg to the outside of Stuart Reynolds as they wind their way through the final couple of corners. You can see the number 96 of Stuart Reynolds under pressure from the 13 of Albin Kjellberg, who comes back up the inside, scares the Mercedes a little bit wide though. That could open the door for Kenny Herrmann potentially. I don't think that's quite going to be it, but as they run their way through the final corner at wide, Stuart Reynolds has lost a big heap of time to Albin Kjellberg to the length of about a second, or definitely a couple of car lengths. So now the fight is on for fourth instead of third, because Albin Kjellberg, you would expect, is going to career himself off into the distance to try and secure that third place. What a move it was, but Stuart Reynolds peculiarly scared off the circuit there. That's not something we often see from Reynolds. He's often quite aggressive and won't let that happen, but I think he sort of did it as to avoid a bit of contact. We didn't quite see the incident in full, but yeah, that was a good bit of racing. Unfortunately, Stuart Reynolds was scared off a little bit, and that did cost him quite a heap of time.
It's a very, very unusual one for sure, but I don't know, it's just... I'm not sure how that all panned out, but the thing is, it's certainly not the last we'll have seen of them two, for sure. We'll go back to the live footage, and again you can see that they've got Hermans and Smart there. Kjellberg though, now that he's kind of got away, you get the feeling he might be off with it.
Yeah, for sure. As we see Kenny Herrmann putting a lot of pressure on Stuart Reynolds in the same bit of tarmac that Albin Kjellberg did it a lap previous, but here comes to the outside. The two BMWs going to run side by side between Hermans and Kieran Smart. I believe also Chris Chatterton wants to get himself involved. This is going to allow Stuart Reynolds a bit of breathing space side by side as they run their way downhill through turn number 1. And that's the thing, scared off the track goes Chris Chatterton, but when you're fighting in a train like this, again, when you knock off your rhythm a little bit, like in karting or any other pack racing, whatever you're going to see, stock cars, whatever it is, if you get a bit of a pack racing, as soon as you lose your momentum, everyone behind you smells blood, and everyone behind you is going to try and capitalize on that to the fullest of their ability, because they see it as an opportunity. As soon as Herrmann went for that move, he left himself vulnerable to a switchback or an open gap on the inside for the likes of Kieran Smart, Chatterton to sneak their way into, which really left the door open. Fortunately for Kenny Herrmann, he wasn't completely let hang out to dry. and is able to hang on to P5 and lead the offensive action on Stuart Reynolds. But again, we'll have to keep checking in on this fight, how it is progressing with only 3 minutes left to go, only a couple more laps. It is going to be very close at the line, and here comes Kenny Herman once again to the outside of Stuart Reynolds. Is he going to be able to make this one stick? Comes back up the inside through the final left. Stuart Reynolds now on the outside, bit of side-to-side contact between the two as they now run their way into the final corner at White's. Bit more contact. The BMW sent Luke Brown. Oh, he gets tagged again, points the right direction, but a ton of momentum lost and down to 7th.
Oh, momentum is the key word. Again, it's one of those things that we talk about almost ad nauseum here, but the reason for that is that it affects you in so many different ways, and you touched on a couple of them there. We'll get back to what on earth happened with Stuart Reynolds there in just a second, but you know, when you have a moment like that, you don't only lose the speed, you also lose a little bit of the confidence as well, Zach. You lose a little bit of that trust that you have in yourself and in the car as well, and it makes it very, very difficult for those that are on peak and on form to not have that upper hand on you.
For sure, especially a circuit like Motorsport. I think it's one of those you really do have to take a hop, skip, and a jump all the way through. This is how it happened between Stuart Reynolds and Kenny Herman. Just a bit of contact, slight tap there. I'm not sure how he ended up going that sideways that quickly, and then you can see just in behind, unfortunately, one of the BMWs sent into the back of him, which allows Stuart Reynolds to get away, but Kieran Smart already back and putting the pressure on. But yeah, it's just a peculiar incident, unfortunately, but it's what you're going to get. It's what you've got to expect when you come and get some good pack racing like this. It's definitely going to happen as we merge into the cockpit. It was side-on contact, which is why I'm confused, David, because normally when you see an incident like that, it's because they've tapped, you know, the rear right on the rear right at a very awkward angle. But here, we just see a bit of side-to-side contact. Again, I'm not sure. Is it because of the nature of that final corner being so you fling it out back to the left and then back in for the right? That puts the car on edge, maybe?
I think what happened from what I saw there was that Herman's got, if it was Herman's that, yeah, I think it was, sorry, Herman's that was on the inside there. There was a little touch of the curb that washes the car out slightly, and it looks like it was the front left made just behind the middle of the car, which is where the sort of centre of balance is. That's enough to tip the car sideways. And you know, it's 50-50 with the iRacing damage model, to be fair, as well, where it actually decides to pick that contact up. I think that, you know, realistically, Stuart Reynolds was very, very unlucky, but realistically also Kenny Hermans looks like that he's come out worse out of it as well. Yeah,
but it's the risk you take when you run side by side. It's an unfortunate one because we love to see drivers taking risks, sending moves up the inside, running side by side for so long, but every time you make a move, you carry a risk on your shoulders that it could end badly. No matter what the move is, there is always that slight risk of things going badly. Unfortunately for some people, they do get fairly unlucky at some points. This is the final lap. We've ticked over the 25-minute mark, so Callum Beeman will lead us across the line to take victory in the pros. We haven't got very long left of his lap. In fact, he's running through towards the final quarter of the lap. We run back to Ashraf Al-Haddad and Michael Patman fighting with Alex Bomberg for tail end places in Pro-Ams, but we have to cut our attention to Callum Beeman. The man on form took the lead from third on the grid ahead of Albin Kjellberg and our pole sitter, of course, as well. He comes across the line to take the flag for race number 1 for round number 8, and he is victorious in Motorsport. He's followed very closely by Neil Butler. Albin Kjellberg rounds off the podium, a good resurgence back to the podium for him. Mind it, 9.3 seconds back on where he would have wanted to be, and we round off the top 4 with Stuart Reynolds, and the top 5 with Kieran Smart, Chris Chatterton, Kenny Herman rounds off. Here comes Lucas Romano negotiating the final couple of corners for him. Didier Vlaming 1.6 seconds back. It was good, but not quite good enough from the Belgian. Lucas Romano takes victory again for the Pro-Ams and extends his championship lead out in front. Stuart Vinez, a respectable P5, could make some inroads on John Williams, who himself suffered some misfortune. We have to cut our attention again back to the AMS as well, because looking as to who won it in that particular race, I'm going to make the guess that it is going to be potentially, I'm actually not too sure. Maybe it's going to be the likes of Dirk Bounce. Indeed it is. He's now going to come across the line 2.6 seconds ahead of James Slates. There's Bounce across the line to take victory, and the Belgians are having a pretty good showing here in Canada.
Yeah, what a fantastic finish there for Dirk Bout. It's great that we actually caught him going across the line there. James Slates in second, Connor Botting going to come across the line in third for that AM finish though. But 25 minutes already done. We've got double the distance to go in this race too. And listen, I think that we've already got the idea that it's not going to be the other drivers that are really going to have to watch out for. It's this circuit itself that they're really going to have to be careful with.
For sure. I mean, we've been to difficult circuits, the likes of Spa and Hockenheim, Red Bull Ring, you know, those sorts of circuits that are fairly difficult, but nothing quite seems to be conquering victims like Motorsport. And of course, we do go to Bathurst in 3 weeks' time to round off the season, so they've definitely got to be careful when we get there. These are the final race results, though. After 25 minutes of action, Callum Beeman takes the victory for the pros ahead of Neil Butler and Albin Kjellberg, who round off your podium. Stuart Reynolds P4 with Kieran Smart, your top 5. Then comes Chris Chatterton, Kenny Harriman, Louis Gardner, Thomas Reiter and Harry Wills, your top 10. Andy D. Miller and Ayers Jumantas, your top 12 and the final place on the pro field. And then we cut our attention to the Pro-Ams, because Lucas Romano, a Belgian, 1-2 with Didier Vamink in second. Then comes Ashraf El Haddad, your podium. Dean Tim, Stuart Viners, your top 5. Liam Ahern, Justin behind there in 6th. Alice Bomberg and Michael Patterman fighting all the way to the checkered flag for P7, with Jeremy De Boyver and Edward Packer, your top 10. Then comes Chris Thacker, John Williams and Francois Poggio. Bad day in the office for John Williams, it must be said, particularly seeing as race ones are pretty much his forte and have been the case over the course of this season. It's a big step backwards in the championship for him. And here comes our relatively short AM field. Dirk Bounce takes victory ahead of James States and championship leader Connor Botting, who takes the final step on the podium. Craig Shaw and Johan Ranger top 5. Alistair Hatcher, Lewis Bouvier recovering quite well to P7 despite his earlier shenanigans and falling to the pit lane, but got back on track and completed the threshold to score points. It's not the amount of points he would have wanted to, though, and will be looking to bounce back in race 2. Kurt Van Hoenacker, Jasper Chucks, Navarro De Boyver and Gus Franken, all of them not making the checkered flag, unfortunately, for them. But that is the result of race number 1. We reverse the top 10, double the time, and go to race 2, David. I'm not too sure about race 2. It's going to be quite chaotic.
I think chaotic is going to be an understatement given what we just saw there. The thing is that while it gives us the information, it gives us the sort of advantage of knowing exactly what to expect. The thing is that it also gives the drivers knowledge on what to expect as well, Zach. It lets them know that, you know, there's maybe not going to be as many overtaking opportunities as we'd like there to be, or maybe it's not going to be as, you know, chaotic as we thought it was going to be, so I'm going to have to make my moves nice and early, or I'm going to have to put more more pennies into the basket in terms of strategy. So I think it's going to be a fascinating race 2 that we've got coming up, but I just can't see how the moves are going to happen on track after, say, the first 10 minutes.
Strategy is going to play a pivotal part over the course of race 2. If you are only just joining us, do not stress. We're going to cut away for 5-10 minutes break while we load up into the next race session, so you haven't missed all the action just yet. As I say, 50 minutes on the clock. We reverse the top 10 and go again for race number 2. It will continue to be myself, Zach Sweeney and David Christie, talking you through all the action here for round number 8 of the IMB World Series GT3 EU. We'll see you in a bit.
Everybody look above, everybody look above, rap game, when the trap game.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park here at Motorsport for round number 8 of the IMB World Series League GT3 EU. We're back for race number 2. We saw some absolute chaos and drama over the course of race 1, and once again it'll be myself, Zach Swinney, and David Christie talking you through all of the action. And well, David, we were talking a little bit just before the break about how chaotic race 1 was, what we're expecting for race 2, and the expectation is that strategy is going to play a massive factor. I mean, it's played a factor over the course of this season so far, but not quite to the extent I think it will here at Motorsport, because just of the nature of this circuit, how difficult it can be to get that track position, actually fighting it out side by side on circuit.
Well, see, that was my opinion coming into the exit of the first race after the mid-race lull and the driver chat that we've just endured over that past 5 minutes. I'm now thinking that defensive mechanisms, possibly mines, some armoured plating on the GT3 cars, it better not disappoint. There's been a lot of talk over there, a lot of tension building up, and I know me and you were in there enjoying it with a nice big healthy bag of popcorn. But joking aside, that's exactly what we were saying. We were saying that strategy is going to play a very, very crucial part in this. The car's really going to have to think about where they're pushing things. We saw that in race 1, that it was very, very difficult to get past. It was very opportunistic if any moves were going to be made. We're certainly about to find out.
Here they are then for the grid, of course, reverse top 10 finishing order of race number 1. So with that out the way, Harry Wills takes pole ahead of Thomas Reiter, who'll join him on the first row. Louis Gardner and Kenny Harriman 3 and 4, but Chris Channerton rounding off your top 5. Kieran Smart will round off to the left-hand side of him with Stuart Reynolds and Albin Kjellberg P7 and 8. Neil Butler, Callum Beeman are top 2 from race 1, round off the top 10. With Andy Miller and Arias Yamantas, the pro field on the 6th row of the grid. Looking to the Pro-Ams, Edward Packer all aboard his train. He was saying over the course of the break he'll be joined by the Belgian of Jeremy de Boiver on the front row. Then comes Michael Patterman and Alex Bomberg. William Mahan your top 5. Stuart Viners in P6 with Dean Timms and Ashraf Al Haddad 7th and 8th. The Belgian front to lockout in race 1 become 9 and 10 here for race number 2 with John Williams and Francois Peugeot. The grid for the Pro-Ams. John Williams for sure going to be looking to move his way forward. Navarro de Boiver takes pole for the AMS. Jasper Tjarks joining him on the front row with Kurt Van Hoenacker and Louis Bouvier, I should say, in P4. Alistair Hatcher rounds off in 5th with Johan Reigns and Craig Schill 6th and 7th. Then comes Connor Botting to round off the 4th row of the grid. He's going to want to make some progress relative to his teammate over the course of race number 2. James States, Dirk Bounce 9th and 10th with Gus Franken rounding off in P11. And well, the grid is stacked up. We're ready to go racing. We've got the formation lap left to go here, David. Only 2.5 miles long though, of course, here at Motorsport, and well, it's heating up to this. We've still got a big sort of ask in terms of the championship. There's still a lot of things to be you've come off the highs of race 1 for some people, you've come off the lows of race 1 for other people, but you still have that same championship burden on your shoulders. You just have to shrug it off, start fresh, and come back for race 2.
Yeah, the key thing here is different points, obviously, in race 2 than there is in race 1. So there's more points to play for, more in terms of the championship standings, things like this. But for me, it's more potential for things to go wrong as well, because while it's tempting to go for those larger amount of points that you get in race 2, we've seen it time and time again, how many times drivers just pushing that little bit too much, that little bit too hard. That's where they end up getting themselves into trouble here, and that's where they end up getting themselves in all sorts of drama. Hopefully that's not what we're going to see. Fingers crossed. Let's hope a nice clean race.
Well, we can hope, fingers crossed. But when it comes to David Christie, he has a certain knack to.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.
Thanks,
no worries. No.
That is completely suboptimal.
Yeah, just a little bit. No, I mean, I can't. It's still November, all right? I can't ruin the 1st of December, right? I can get away with it now. I can't ruin the Christmas spirit just yet.
All right, very quickly, pop quiz. How many laps is Harry Wills going to keep the lead for?
Ha, not many. Let's say that much. Anyway, we'll have a wait. We'll see. We'll see. He rounds the final corner now to signal us underway. He'll take pole position. Thomas Rice will be alongside him as they get underway for 50 minutes of race number 2 here for round number 8 of the IMB World Series League's GT3 EU. We're underway in racing for race 2 at Motorsport, and Harry Wills leads them down and towards turn 1 at least for now. Thomas Reiter following in tow in second place. Already a bit of drama in the background as Kieran Smart finds himself meeting his good old friend of Barrier. Back underway for the Pro-Ams. Edward Packer leads the way ahead of Jeremy De Boyver and Michael Patterman, who will run side by side in towards turn 1. A very spaced out grid, though, it must be said. John Williams already up 3 places, up in a P8. We cut our way back to the pros because Louis Gardner's putting a bit of pressure on the board of Thomas Reiter. Now we have to cut back to the AMs because Navarro De Boyver leads from Jasper Charks, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Lewis Bouvier now running side by side as they run towards turn number 2 and 3. Lewis Bouvier up in a P3 and making some very, very good progress indeed. And in the Pro-Ams, Edward Packer started on pole, and unfortunately for him, he's now to the back end of the top 10.
Well, that was a fun start. I've got about 50,000 replays that we've got to try and get through there. Edward Packer still off you at the side there. Stuart Wyness is gone. Kieran Smart is gone. Andy Miller and Liam Ahern all out so far as Thomas Reiter's fighting side by side with Louis Gardner. Harry Wills absolutely tearing away here.
He is indeed. He's led one. Tick it off and count it, and I'm sure you'll be able to count the amount of laps he leads on your fingers. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see. Louis Gardner to the inside of Thomas Reiter for second place. We just got the tail end of that, and this is what happened to Kieran Smart and also a fellow BMW, the number 15 there, as they run their way into Moss at turn 5. Back to the live action then, because Thomas Reiter is going against Albin Kjærberg for P6, and again to the replay, this is what happened with Thomas Reiter and who would have been the car he was fighting, Louis Gardner, I believe, for the podium places. Fortunately for him, was forced a little bit wide and out to the extremities of the circuit, and now getting mugged off by a number of drivers. This will happen to Louis Gardner once again down and towards, I believe, turn 5. Just a little bit wide. Oh, bit of a tap to the barrier. Managed to, I think, get away with it with just a slight bend on that rear wing.
Do you remember when we were thinking it was possibly going to be a quieter start to the second race here? Absolutely no chance of that whatsoever. You've got Jasper Tjerks and Lewis Bouvier fighting it out here for P2 and P3. You've also got pretty much everyone else in the Amfield all the way behind there as well. You've got Jeremy De Boyver under attack here from Michael Patterman, Achraf El Haddad here. I tell you what, Zach, we're going to be earning our money here tonight.
Oh, I can't wait at all. You and O'Leary, you are missing out, my good old friend, because we've got Jeremy De Boyver, Michael Patterman, Achraf El Haddad, the top 3 in the Pro-Ams at the moment, fighting for the lead, and we still have 47 minutes and 10 seconds of action left to go, of course, with the addition of the pit stop as well over the course of this race. Thomas Reiter, it's been a roller coaster of emotions already over the course of race 2. The highs of getting up and a good start, and then an immediate crash back down to reality when it comes to him having a couple of crashes. Unfortunately for him, we are having to avert our attention up, down, left, right in this race so far because we don't quite know where to look. There's replays and live action lined up, queued up for the next while, and I'm sure that's going to be no different. Here's Albin Kjærberg, who's had a pretty tough time today. I mean, that's how it's looked so far when you look at his race, but a P3 in race 1 and currently still running inside the top 10 here in race 2 so far. He's had some misfortune, but he's making the most out of it.
He is trying to, as Francois Perdreau has a cheeky little encounter with the barrier there. The problem is that you have to have luck on your side with races like this. You have to be able to make things work in your advantage. Just like Harry Wills is doing at the moment, 2.5 seconds ahead of Chris Chatterton, although that's pretty much because everyone else in the pro field is deciding to cause issues for themselves here. Back to this Pro-Am battle though, Jeremy De Boyver, cracking job in the De Boyver brothers actually first in each of the classes.
Father and son.
Father and son. Do you know what? I couldn't remember if it was that or because I remember we have brothers and we've got father and son, and of course I'd choose the wrong one.
Yeah, unfortunate for you. But hey ho, it's because right, they last season at Le Mans they did so well. We were like, hang about, the Boivers doing really well, and then we're calling them brothers or whatever, and then they corrected us in the chat, and it's just stuck since. They've been quite a standout name, the De Boivers, over the course of the last couple of seasons. They've really been doing quite well, and Jeremy De Boiver at the moment leads the Pro Ams. His son Navarro De Boiver at P1 in the Ams at the moment. Neither of them have really boasted much success over the course of season number 4. Of course, Jeremy De Boiver was in the shout for the AM Championship lead last time for season 3. Navarro De Boiver has had an up and down, mostly towards the end of the downs for the last season and a half, really. But now that could see his fortunes change. But only time will tell. We've still got a long way, only 10% of the way through this race. Still got 90 of it left to go. But Jeremy De Boiver under a lot of pressure from Michael Patman and Ashraf Al-Haddad. This is a top 3, quite a bit of a breakaway, but not quite to the extent of Harry Wills, of all people. 2.5 seconds clear of Chris Chatterton.
Well, I've lost my own bet about how many laps that Harry Wills is going to lead for, because if he is streaking away with this one, I'm going to be out a lot of money on this for sure. 2.5 seconds. So, and look, this again goes back to something we joked about at the end of the first race, is the fact that we get so frustrated because we know that he has got this pace in him, we know he has got this quality and ability in him, but for some reason he seems to be his own worst enemy. Thankfully, with the fact that he's not having a fight now, he can maybe just focus on, you know, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, hitting the apexes, getting the car turned in nice and early, and just settling down into a rhythm.
Yeah, for sure. When Harry Wills is in a mindset, when he's just driving around like he's on a scale electric circuit, that's a Harry Wills you don't want to mess with, because he is a monster. Once he's tuned into that frequency, it's his track and you're just on it, right? Because yeah, he's proven it so far over the course of this race. Touch wood that we don't, you know, but because we're saying this, we're going to jinx him or whatever. As I say, don't believe in the commentator's curse, only bad driving, but still, you know, part of the superstitious side of me says, let's not talk about it, let's just let him get on with it and lead the way at the moment. But still a long way to go. We're still waiting for Stuart Reynolds and Neil Butler, Callum Beeman, Albin Kjærberg. They're 3, 4, 5 and 6, the main contenders, quote unquote, you would say, in this race. Same to a Chris Chatterton, it must be said, but even these aren't making much of a dent versus the lead of Harry Wills. They're going to have to work on the consistency. They're going to have to work together to get towards the front. As we cut back to Stuart Vinez, this was that right at the start? They hadn't even gotten away yet, and this might be an explanation as to why we saw such a kerfuffle and a spread out Pro-Am start, because Stuart Vinez just, I don't know. I'm perplexed as to what happened there.
I'm very, very confused here. Let's try and slow this down if we possibly can, because I think he gets the jump and decides to go for it, tips the car into him, and then basically gets caught out on the wrong end of things. So I think he's jumped the start, and yeah, that is not the cleanest of starts, I'll be honest with you.
Not just, yeah, not at all,
to
say the least. This is Johan Reigns and Dirk Bout having a bit of an off. Dirk Bout, of course, taking the victory in race 1. Johan Reigns not doing too bad himself either. And unfortunately for him, he's definitely going to be remembering that Holiday Inn sign after making a bit of contact with it with his front end. This is what happened between the pair of them, the two Audis running uphill towards Moss at turn 5. And what happened? Did Dirk Bounce get a little bit sideways? No, just tagged around himself, did Johan Reigns, and then just collected other people. And that is awkward with the BMW. He is not going to be very happy at all. However, this is the fight for the lead. Chris Chatterton, Harry Wills side by side down the Mario Andretti straight towards the final couple of corners. Harry Wills to the left-hand side, Chris Chatterton to the right. It'll be the inside for the next right-hander if he can maintain that momentum. But Harry Wills trying to hang his nose out around the outside, back up the inside for the next left-hander as they run their way through towards the final corner here at Whites. Chris Chatterton brings it back to the left-hand side to maintain the lead of the race as they tick off lap number 6. And on to 7 now. Chris Chatterton down in towards turn 1, leads for the first time here in race 2. Harry Wills now under pressure from Stuart Reynolds, Neil Butler, Callum Beeman, and maybe Albin Kjærberg soon. This is what happened to cause the bit of action. Harry Wills through Moss. He's already got a bit of damage to the front right of that Mercedes. He just about managed to get away with it, but of course Moss leads you down the Mario Andretti straight, and ruining your momentum there ruins your momentum all the way down here.
Yeah, that's literally the last place on earth you want to have a moment onto it, because it just scrubs off so much speed for the entirety of the lap there. Lewis Bouvier has had a moment, and he is fighting now with Connor Botting right now, so was up in that P2, dropping all the way down to P3 and possibly into P4 as well here, but oh my goodness me, I mean, this is just absolutely frantic stuff. Thankfully, I think Harry Wills has stabilised a little bit. He's kept Stuart Reynolds off at bay, and he's now chomping at the bit to get that place back from Chris Chatterton. However, this is my big concern, and I've seen this week and time again from Harry Wills, is that he just doesn't seem to know where the limit is on that Mercedes, or maybe because of the setup that he's got, he has to drive it at the ragged edge. And just, you know, sometimes he pushes it that little bit too far, and that's when the accidents happen. For sure, yeah, and we talk about it all the time in terms of confidence. We'll come back to that point in just a second, because Pro-Am lead is heating up between Jeremy de Boiver and Michael Patterman. Michael Patterman in the Porsche to the outside of turn number 1. You don't often see that, but he's managed to make it work, and that Porsche danced his way around the outside of the Belgian there. Jeremy de Boiver caught with his pants around his ankles, it must be said. Michael Patterman up into the race lead, and now Ashraf El Haddad in P3 is lurking in the shadows, waiting for his opportunity to pounce. Lucas Romano, Dean Timms also closing the gap with John Williams up there in P6 as well, but Lucas Romano breathing in and closing in on this fight for the podium. Michael Patterman, though, what a sensational move to the outside of turn 1. How long that corner is, how fast that corner is, but he managed to make it work, and that is mightily impressive. I would say scandalous is how I would describe it. Let's have another look of him. It all started on that sort of side by side at the start of turn 1 there, but again round the outside, he just had the confidence in that machine to keep the foot in, keep it planted. But it's not lasted. It's not lasted very long for poor Lucas Romano, because Romano now getting and De Boiver in real trouble with El Haddad now up to P2.
What a race is starting to unfold here. Michael Patterman really starting to get away to the clearance of about a second. But Jeremy de Boiver, again, we're going back to that point about Harry Wills, about confidence and things like that, particularly in pack racing. Overtaken once, you're like, what's going on? And then boom, that's what happened to Jeremy de Boiver. That confidence, his morale had been knocked. He'd been knocked down a peg or two, and he was starting to doubt himself. He was starting to go through the motions of replaying that thing. What could I have done better? Oh my God, I've just lost the lead, blah, 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 blah. All that circling through his head at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then it comes into effect because he's not focused on 100% on hitting his apex, hitting his marks, and working well. He's starting to doubt himself. And as soon as those doubts start to creep in, that's when the crucial mistakes start to play into a factor, as we saw there. And unfortunately for him, it's gone from losing the race lead to losing a podium place. Back up though, Harry Wills seems to have returned to his composure, because through the final couple of corners, he's putting a bit of pressure back onto Chris Chatterton, who was able to thwart this attack on this particular occasion. Stuart Reynolds and Neil Butler running side by side through turn 1 potentially as well. The two Twisted Racing Team Mercedes. Oh my God, Harry Wills, what's happened there? Oh my word! How? My word, Harry Wills, how have you saved that, good sir? That is a Harry Wills, ladies and gentlemen, and that is, wow. I don't think there's an adjective in the English dictionary to describe just how awesome that was.
Yep, that was absolutely incredible. This is a little bit early, but we'll see if we can go on board. So look, he goes wide and he hooks that left-hand rear on the grass, keeps it in, and get this, that didn't count as an off track, and he didn't lose any time whatsoever. In fact, he gained a little bit of time on that. That is absolutely unbelievable. That was all that happened, was he hooked his left rear tyre onto that grass there, and I knew that was going to happen because he did something that he doesn't normally do, and that was go over the curb on that right-hander there. That was what set him off a little bit wider, and now he's under real trouble because look at how much he's pushing. Here comes Stuart Reynolds right now. This is allowing Chris Chatterton to get a little bit of a break here.
Just a little bit, but for Harry Wills, they always say you're not defined on your mistakes, you're defined on how you correct them. Albin Kjellberg doing a Harry Wills times 10, really rally crossing to the extent of the full use of the grass runoff area on the exit of turn 1, but Harry Wills really bouncing back from the mistake. It saves like that you just forget about the mistake in all of its seriousness, because you're just like, that was awesome. Did they see that on broadcast? They better have done, because that was kind of cool. I'm really proud of that sort of thing. I know that's what I get. I get all giddy when I make a good save, because I'm like, oh, look at me. I'm like Ken Block. And if you've seen his what was the Las Vegas strip with the Gymkhana, that is what you feel like when you make a good save on sim racing. You're like, oh my word, I am awesome. Look at me, ladies and gents, and I'm really blowing steam up my backside when you make a save like that, because it's just awesome. But anyway, Harry Wills is still to the extent of about half a second back on Chris Chatterton, but again under pressure, as we say, from his teammate Stuart Reynolds and Callum Beeman, Neil Butler, and Alvin Kjellberg as well. And this is what happened to the Dutchman of Ashraf El Haddad in the Twisted Racing Team Porsche. To the extent, to tapping the barrier, tapping it again for good measure. Could have definitely ended worse, though. We cut back to this fight for the lead, though, between Lewis Boubier and Jasper Sharks. Boubier, with a very stricken rear wing, still able to take the victory, take the race lead so far, as he rounds through Moss Corner, turn number 5, back down the Mario Andretti straight. Somehow that Audi is not in the pit lane, and somehow that Audi is just taking the race lead.
Unbelievable stuff there from Lewis Boubier there. Obviously that rear wing not cost them too much time, but it does look like it's a bit of a handful down the straight there. Look at the speed difference that the BMW's got. Shut up. There's no way that BMW is just driven round the outside of that poor Audi like it's not even there. It tried to. That was some effort from Jasper Sharks there, and great stuff in this battle. And you know, we don't often get to see the AMs as much as maybe we'd like to, because we don't see the same amount of fighting and battling maybe that we see in the pros and the pro-am. So it's nice to give these guys a little bit of attention.
Yeah, they are really heating up, particularly Lewis Boubier. His rear wing is going to be under a lot of tension as well, because yeah, you can't even see most of it from head on. There's 2/3 of a rear wing, which is baffling. But anyway, that is that is this season. It speaks volumes about this season. Let's say that much, because yeah, this is the fight that we've got at the moment in the AMs. You also see the Prime Motorsport car Connor Botting there in P4. Remember, Lewis Boubier and Connor Botting are fighting each other for the championship. They've been rivals and teammates all throughout this season, and there's been no love lost between the two of them. They've been going toe to toe all throughout this season. This could be the move we saw from Connor Botting potentially down in towards the S's, but we cut our attention to the pros, because still between Chris Chatterton. Then we cut back to this fight amongst the AMs between Navarro de Boiva and Connor Botting. To the outside quickly becomes the inside for the Audi. Navarro de Boiva trying to keep him honest, back up the inside of the final corner here at White, still going to emerge side by side. Connor Botting pushed the full extremities of the outside of the circuit, bit of contact, oh my word, and he's sent into the barrier. Navarro de Boiva able to carry on going with not much damage, but Connor Botting sent straight into the barrier. Going to take just another look at it, maybe slow it down just a touch as to what happened between these two. But wow, again, it just goes to show how quick the pendulum can swing, David.
It really is. And again, it's that curb on the outside. I think, for me, I think that on the outside there, Connor Botting's going to feel like he wasn't given enough room there. It does look like, I mean, there's no reason that.
That's left hand down. That is in a bit.
You notice the silence there. That's a very awkward. How do you defend that?
You don't.
The thing is that going back just a couple of seconds, we'll jump back again, and because obviously it's a 50-minute race, so we've got plenty of time to diagnose this, shall we say. Let's actually go on board then with that car that's just behind him there of Navarro de Boiva. I don't know how to. They're side by side here, right? So he's on the insides. I think there's a little. I don't like that left hand down, right? Okay, so he's already away at this point. I think there was contact there, and yeah. Well, anyway, there's our career as race stewards in a nutshell. Because the thing is like we've seen incidents through this championship which have resulted in cars not returning, drivers not returning to the championship. I don't think that was one of those, but I think that the race stewards would be inclined to look at that more closely and find out what happened there. I think that was more to do with the initial contact there, and the car may be unsettled. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, Navarro de Boiva very, very lucky to be up in front. As Stuart Reynolds Oh dear.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, we don't get paid enough to commentate and steward at the same time, particularly with the backlash that you get from drivers at sometimes as well. You're going to need to add a couple of zeros, I think, to be able to deal with that. Stuart Reynolds.
Oh no.
That is a sticky one. That's a sticky
Oh no.
one. Unfortunate for him. What happened? We'll take another look. Harry Wills. No. Just completely four-wheel slided to the exit of turn 5. And again, it's a corner that has taken so many victims. Does not show any mercy. Takes no prisoners. This turn number 5 at Moss, here at Motorsport. But between the pair of them, that is not a good lap. Last couple of minutes have not been great while we've been trying to quote-unquote diagnose the incident between Conor Botting and Navarro de Buiva. It's all been kicking off for the Mercedes, and that is a big shame. Harry Wills still in the contention for top 5, but considering where he could have been in this race, that is, that's 4 places. There's 4 places that's going to be unsatisfying for Harry Wills.
I honestly don't know what to say about that. Oh my goodness me, that is not the best. You've got Gus Franken coming into bother again. That car is pretty much done and dusted. He has had a horrific day. Conor Botting into the pits as well. Liam Ahern has had a crash as well, and he's just decided, so this is from the earlier contact, he's taken the car out of pit lane and obviously just decided that the damage is just way too much on that one. Conor Botting though leaves the pits just now. Oh my good lord, I mean, everything that you could think has happened on this one has happened on this one. Jerome Reigns has had another moment. Alistair Hatcher has crashed out the race as well, and that's a little bit of contact for the car. I don't understand how that can happen. The car is stationary on the track. How can you hit a stationary car?
Well, I mean, the barrier is stationary and people still hit that. So, I mean, take that as you will. I mean, turn 5, it's a corner that is quite blind. I mean, it's a very undulating circuit as Motorsport. I mean, you're going into turn 5. Well, I haven't driven it myself. I don't claim to be an expert. It's the first race I've commentated on this circuit, blah, 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 blah. Turn 5 does seem to be quite a tricky corner, and already you're asking a lot of the car. We'll come back to that in a sec, because Neil Butler and Albin Kjærberg fighting for the podium potentially as they run their way through this long right-hander. Neil Butler gets the drive off the corner to the left-hand side of short, to the right-hand side of Albin Kjærberg. They dip down through turn number 2, the long sweeping left-hander. Albin Kjærberg able to stay in front, at least for now, but this is the corner we're talking about here at Moss. You're already asking a lot, both of the brakes, getting the car slowed down, but also the lateral load going under the tyres. They are so overwhelmed that you're asking so much of the car. It's not going to want to respond to a sudden left or right flick. I mean, you can look in front and try and predict it all you like, but it's going to be tricky to make anything stick. We'll come back to that again in a sec, because Neil Butler back up to the inside through the S's at the end of the Mario Andretti straight, up into P3 at least for now. Albin Kjærberg forced to tuck in behind of the 41 Porsche. Neil Butler then up into P3, and the lead car in terms of the Championship 3 up into 3rd place, but still 4.5 seconds back off the fight for first between Chris Chatterton and Callum Beeman. Jasper Chucks from 2nd place in the AMS, now tumbling to the back end of the top 5.
Let's have a look at what's happened here for Chucks. Oh, and that's contact. That is going to be James Slates in the... no, that's John Williams, isn't it? Oh, that's awful. That's a Pro-Am car fighting and colliding with an Am car. I don't think that's going to be looked on too favourably there. And, of course, that's what ends up causing issues with that car there. Man, you absolutely hate to see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that you really do hope that you never see, but sometimes you do. And it's a shame. James Slates carries on up there in 2nd place. He's followed closely by Dirk Bouts. Lewis Boubier, his race to lose, it must be said, especially considering Conor Botting. So the two teammates of Lewis Boubier and Conor Botting both have had their fair share of misfortune in this race. We saw Lewis Boubier having misfortunous race 1. Conor Botting now has had his turntables now for race 2, but of course race 2 does offer more points, so maybe it's swung the way of Lewis Boubier very ever so slightly over the course of this event for round number 8. But again, we'll have to see what the maths says come the end of this race. And where they rack up in terms of the championship going into the final 2 rounds. Of course, we take a break week for week 13, and then we come back for Daytona round number 9 and Bathurst round number 10. 2 fantastic venues to round off this season, and of course to round off 3 epic championship tales. But again, we have to focus on the final half here of race number 2, and this, Albin Kjellberg, wow, down to P6, a bit of a spin on the exit of turn 1. Was this by himself? It looks to be the case. Pushing a bit too hard, or taking a bit too much of the grass, and then the car's already way too unsettled. Oh, nearly held it. Nope, and it's gone. And yeah, I think that was just a knock-on effect. One thing wrong led to this thing wrong, led to this thing wrong that we're now seeing. Yeah,
of course, one of the quirks of iRacing is you get to that point where it's an unrecoverable spin. Where the car can take maybe 2-3 corners to actually finally lose control of the car there, and that's exactly what happened there with Kjellberg. There was nothing at any point that he could do to recover that car. It's a case of you just have to kind of grin and bear it as we hit the halfway point here. Harry Wills up into P4 ahead of iRacing Mantis. It's an awkward one to do, but you saw from how he was, it was just a case of he had to just grin and bear it as we've got side by side for the lead.
We do indeed. We cut back to the fight amongst the pros between Callum Beeman and Chris Chatterton. Callum Beeman able to get himself up into the lead of the race here for race 2. 1, of course, a race to go for race number 1, as we see a parked car there. That is Navarro Boiva. That is a shame for him. He was leading the race at some point, and unfortunately has fallen to P6. Back in the Pro-Ams, Michael Patterman still leads from Lucas Romano, Dean Timms and Jeremy De Boiva, the father, of course, of Navarro. And now three-way fight for the lead, so we're definitely no shortage of action amongst our middle class of the Pro-Ams. Michael Patterman making a fantastic showing against our championship leader and ex-champ of Dean Timms.
What a brilliant race we've had so far, halfway through the second race of this 8th round in the championship. I cannot believe that we've got so few rounds left to go after this. It's quite sad actually, because this has just been one of the most enthralling championships I think we've had, certainly that I've been part of, either in commentary or in production. It's just been absolutely brilliant in all of the different fields, both with Pro-Am and with Am as well. This Pro-Am battle though with Michael Patterman, Lucas Romano and Dean Timms right now, this makes me think this is going to get very, very spicy as Albin Kjellberg into the pit lane.
Unsurprisingly so, whether that's for a scheduled stop or for him pulling in after damage, that remains to be seen. You would expect it to be a scheduled stop, because you might as well make the lap you've had a spin the worst lap just by coming into the pit lane and just taking it on the chin and trying to carry on. From there, 27 minutes actually, let's make that in this race, well over halfway, and still waiting for the majority of the pit lane sequence to get underway. That's something we're going to keep our eye on over the course of this race. John Williams, Albin Kjellberg both have come in to make their pit stop. Also having a look further down, Gus Frank and Navarro Boiva, Kurt Van Hohenacke, and anyone else behind that also have made a pit stop, whether that's scheduled or for strategical reasons, probably not. But again, it's something to keep our eye on as this race unfolds. But yeah, that is something that we definitely were saying is going to take precedence over the course of race 2. We are well into that window as we see Stuart Reynolds into the pit lane to kickstart the pro pit lane sequence. But yeah, we were talking about how it's going to take such a vital role in this race, and it all starts here.
It really, really does, and it's so important, not just for the race here, I think, Zach, for the championship as well. So many different permutations that can come out of the result of this race here. We're seeing Michael Patterman just ahead of Lucas Romano. Again, just thinking for the championship-wise, you're so difficult in terms of the options that you've got. Do you go for the extra points? I mean, if you're up in the top 3, I would say you want to try and... You're going to have less risk that you want to take than, say, if you're outside of the top 3, I would imagine. Because yes, you've got more points that you could try and get from the second race here, but ultimately as well, you've got to then think about it, more points that you could lose from the second race. That's the key difference. And I hate getting to that stage of the championship, because for me as a driver, it takes all the fun out of it, because you can't take risks anymore. You can't just absolutely send it for the fun of absolutely sending it. You have to start calculating your battles, although I don't think that's what's going on here with Lucas Romano.
Fortunately for you, David, you're Scottish and you don't have the reputation of being in championship fights or any championship at all. World Cup.
I will absolutely give you that, Zach. I will absolutely give you that. That makes us excellent for standing on the outside looking in, because we're very, very used to it. Pretty much. That you get that first-hand experience here from David Christie, ladies and gents. But yeah, these guys on track will know a lot more about championship fights than we do. Lucas Romano trying to hammer some pressure on Michael Patterman, but as you say, he's in that very same predicament, not for the Scots, but to actually be in a championship fight. Lucas Romano, he has to take so much caution in this fight, because as you say, he can't just send it. He can't go, all right, screw it, I'm just going to go banging up the inside, because he has Dean Timms to look out for. He has his championship to look out for, and on a day where John Williams hasn't had the best 2 races, of course, didn't do quite well over the course of race 1. I think it was P12 or P11 he managed to get to, now only P8. He's going to be quite content with P2, and it's not that early stage in the season where we're seeing it, regardless of how quick you are, you're going to send a move anyway. We're seeing it now where I'll take P2 because it's good enough. And good enough has to be okay. You have to be okay with just taking the points that you actually need rather than the points that you actually want, because sometimes that gamble doesn't pay off, and when it comes down to these final 3 rounds of the championship, more often than not that gamble will not pay off. We've seen that time and time again tonight here, Zach, with the amount of contact, the amount of questionable incidents. You start asking yourself, is that really a position I want to be putting myself into? Many times the answer should be no.
For sure, you do have to second guess yourself. You have to go through the thought process a little bit more. You can't just act on instinct. Well, it might actually be better to act on instinct, because then you go with your gut and you act in the moment rather than contemplating a million different outputs of how it could go. You're not Doctor Strange. You're not going to predict which one's going to end up right. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut, and contemplating waste time and waste thought process that you could be spending on hitting apexes, on putting pressure on the car in front of you, things like that. So sometimes it is best just to act with instinct and go with what your raw gut tells you. And for most championship protagonists, it's be safe, don't be an idiot, to put it in the most crude way possible. But sometimes you might have to go for it. Sometimes the win is on the card. Sometimes Lucas Romano might want to say, hang about, I don't know how my next 2 races are going to go, I want to get as many points as possible.
But in that case as well, it's a difficult one. But I don't have that ability in terms of sim racing. I don't have that cut off, that mental switch where I can go, right, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z, because 9 times out of 10 I just seem to drive to the maximum ability of what I'm able to do regardless of the situation, and 9 times out of 10 you're putting yourself in positions that really you don't actually want to be in, and if you were smarter about it you wouldn't actually be putting yourself, as we see Dean Timms coming out of the pit lane. And thankfully for the majority of these drivers, that's exactly what we're seeing here. They're double, they're thinking twice about whether they actually need to fight for this position. Yeah,
completely agree. And again, it's something we're going to talk about over the final 2 rounds of this season. Chris Chatterton, Elias Yamantas all into the pit lane as well. We just saw the likes of Neil Butler, Alvin Kjellberg, Stuart Reynolds have all come into the pit lane. Same 2 Dean Timms in the Pro-Ams also in. So really has gotten underway, has this pit lane sequence. And with only now less than 18 minutes left to go, about 17 minutes and what was that, 17 seconds now as we tick down to the latter stages of this race. It is crunch time in terms of your in laps, out laps, getting your mark stop, because that's the thing, right? The pit lane sequence, the strategy in this series isn't complicated, right? It's run your tank dry or get to a point where you feel comfortable to pit, come in, top it up, off you go. But sometimes it's not actually as simple as it seems, because you still have to get into the pit lane as effectively as possible. You have to drive through the pit lane. You have to get stopped so you don't speed. You have to stop on your marks. And when you're under a lot of pressure, things that seem so trivial and so easy as that, just stopping in your pit box, can become so difficult because of the stress that you're under, that if you overshoot it a little bit, you're going to lose a lot of time, as we see Alvin Kjellberg bad to us for the Swede. Just carrying himself into the barrier goes Alvin Kjellberg. pirouetting round goes the number 13, and his quote-unquote lucky number of the number 13 is not great for him at all. And while he's got the raw potential, he's got the speed, unfortunately for him, sometimes luck hasn't quite gone his way. We cut back to Didier Vlaming fighting here for P5, or not so much actually. He's in a bit of a no man's land here in 5th. Is the Belgian P2, of course, over the course of race 1, and bouncing back for P5 here for race 2. Into the pit lane he comes. We cut back to Jeremy De Boiver, who himself has not taken to the pit lane so far in this race, so he's carrying on. Michael Patterman and Lucas Romano also both not in, but Chris Chatterton now for P3, he's been able to come into the pit lane. So while people have got some clear air, David, they've got to make the best use of it.
They really do, and Chris Chatterton did a grand job of actually getting himself back up there ahead of Neil Butler. Granted, that gap was only half a second, but again, it's that sort of mental advantage as we come into the final 15 minutes of the race here. Fantastic move there. Michael Patterman still to pit, so there's Lucas Romano and Jeremy De Boiver, so I get the feeling that they're all going to come into the pits at the same time. But it's really now the likes of Callum Beeman, who is 15 seconds ahead of Harry Wills. They're going to be coming into the pits, but also you get the feeling that they'll maybe be trying to roll the dice slightly differently. They'll maybe be trying to underfuel or save something from it. But given that Chatterton and Butler did 10-second pit stops, and they were in the pits for a total of 35 seconds, I don't see how you can massively undercut the pit stops that they've done.
Yeah, most notably when it comes to difference in strategy. I look back to Sebring last season when it came to Timothy Vanderbroek and him making a bit of a weird decision when it came to fuel strategy. He tried to go as long as possible, but unfortunately underfueled just a little bit, and the timing was very, very close. It was the smallest of margins, and unfortunately for him, he didn't quite make it to the line. So underfueling is a massive risk that you undertake, as we see side by side between Lucas Romano having a bit of a look to the inside of turn 5. He's been given the space by Michael Patterman, but to the outside the Porsche, gets the drive off the corner. Great acceleration from the number 75 of Michael Patterman down the Andretti straight. Lucas Romano tucked up nicely in the slipstream, though it seems the Porsche's got the legs down this straight, down towards the S's, or I should say uphill climb, at least for now. Michael Patterman holds firm. Romano to the left-hand side. If he can brake late and try and keep the momentum, it might turn to the inside, but that's not been the case. Tucking back in tow does Lucas Romano, but crucially putting some pressure on. I think that's very, very important. Actually dummying to the pit lane. In comes Romano, in comes De Boiver, in comes Al Haddad. Michael Patterman isolated by himself. He's going long, and this is the most important lap of this race if he wants to win.
Wow. Oh, and that is absolutely huge for the championship.
Oh.
Louis Boubier and that's been a full-on crash.
Let's see what happened. Already damage stricken is that Audi. Turn 5 again. It's not his fault though. Caught up. Oh wow. Interesting. Not quite a full-on crash unless there's more to the story. Caught up by the 7 car of Didier Vlaming, the Pro-Am Belgian driver, as the exits turn 5. I think he tried to take avoiding action. In doing so, jumped over the curb, and an already damaged BMW.
Done. Look at it.
Already damaged BMW has somehow gotten even more damage going over that curb and having a spin. Very peculiar. I'm not sure whether that was that the curb or was that previous damage.
Oh, that is previous damage. I've just noticed. Yep, here we go then.
Here we go, having a bit of a look. Heading in.
Oh no, so this is the same incident. So I don't understand, because it's just over there. It's broken the suspension going over the curb.
It's a high curb. Did he hit the floor with that much bang? I don't know.
Because if we go on board with him, what you'll likely see is that we'll go on board again. The car's driving normally. Fine.
Avoids the car. Over the curb. Bang. That must have been what it. And then bang. That he obviously spun because there was some damage that he wasn't expecting. We'll see now as he rejoins. Is this then the cause of where we're seeing some problems?
Destroyed.
Yeah. It's gone there. It must have been the curb. That is the only safe conclusion we can bring from this.
Wow, that is absolutely bonkers. And that, again, that now throws the whole championship up in the air, because obviously we were looking at the likes of Connor Botting and now Lewis Boubier into the pits as well. I mean, wow. Well, I tell you what, the AMs are getting plenty of coverage this week. Just unfortunate that it's in these circumstances.
Any coverage is good coverage, I suppose. But yeah, interesting, because Lewis Boubier on a day that, a race I should say, not necessarily a day, he'd had a poor race one, but on a race that he should have capitalised versus his teammate and championship rival of Connor Botting, yeah, it's ended badly. Also for that BMW just in front, trying to keep it out of the barrier, it's not gone his way. The number 12 of Navarro de Boiva, even more upset for the Belgian, and unfortunately for him, taking a very long round trip on the grass off the exit of turn number 1. And that is very strange indeed as we enter in towards the final 10.5 minutes of this race. The pit stop window is well underway and probably closed. This is what happened to Lucas Romano, of all people, Pro-Am Championship protagonist. And that is a first. We haven't seen that incident so far today, but you can definitely understand, you can definitely see how it happened. And ow, yeah, just a snap onto the grass, passenger turning, asking way too much of the front wheels, and found himself into the tyre barrier. That is such a shame for Lucas Romano. And again, for John Williams, who has had a poor race, Lucas Romano needs to capitalise. It seems the BMW hit the barrier at such an angle that both tyres were pointing straight, so it wasn't like he completely bent like a steering arm or something like that. He seems to have gotten away with it, but still suboptimal, to coin that term once again, for lack of better term. Literally lack of better term. There's a car stopped, 2 cars stopped actually, an Audi and a Porsche, I believe. Yeah, this race has been a roller coaster, more so than the circuit we're at.
Yeah, I think that was Jeroen Reigns as well that stopped at the edge of the circuit. Indeed it was. So let's see what happens with these two. Surely has been connected. Well, I know, Zach, you like a good terrible rejoin just as much as the next man. I think that was a fairly certain terrible rejoin there. I'm presuming, was that Alistair Hatcher? I think it was that did that rejoin there.
Yeah, he's had his spin.
Oh, to be fair,
that wasn't
yeah,
his fault. No, he was
yeah, that
he was
wasn't
still
a rejoin.
sliding. That was, yeah, just unfortunate timing for Jeroen Reigns, I think. Yeah.
At this stage
really
of the
excited.
race, I was just going to say, at this stage of the race, Zach, is it easier to comment on who hasn't actually come into any sort of calamity?
Let's have a look. Let's go through. We've got Callum Beeman. Can't remember anything of him. He's up 9 places. One race one, not Jonathan Ross. He's won race 1. He's looking good to win race 2. Neil Butler, I don't think, has come into any sort of contact. Chris Chatterton, maybe. Harry Wills, definitely. Yamantas had a poor race 1. We'll come back to that in a sec. We've got a fight for the lead amongst the Pro-Ams. Dean Timms versus Michael Patterman side by side. You can see the Porsche of Michael Patterman to the outside might get caught up by some lap traffic as they head in towards the S's, who darts out of their way. Does not want to get involved in that. Just said nope. Dean Timms, though, up into the race lead for the BMW. Brilliant stuff. Michael Patterman caught again napping as we head in towards dusk here in Canada. Lights are on as we enter the final 8 minutes. Last couple of laps of race number 2. Dean Timms leads the way. Michael Patterman there in second and not maintaining that gap.
Well, it's safe to say as well, Zach, that the drivers who haven't made it through the remainder of the race are absolutely loving all the entertainment that is going on right now, because we've just seen chaos kicking off left, right and centre here, as we've got still Kenny Hermans and Navarro de Boiva. I mean, I'm scared any time we actually cut to poor Navarro. Do you think he's not a fan of this circuit right now?
It was for about the first 3 laps of this race, and then it went downhill for Navarro de Boiva. And that is a shame. For sure, Dean Timms stretching away ahead of Michael Patterman to about 1.5 seconds, so maybe some fuel saving going on for Michael Patterman to try and get to the end of this race. But yeah, very interesting indeed. This is Ashraf El Haddad versus Jeremy de Boiva for P3 in the AMs. You can see they're separated by about 1/10 of a second as they run in towards the S's. Jeremy de Boiva looking to the left-hand side. Ashraf El Haddad keeps him at bay for now. And as we head in towards the final sector, having a bit of a look to the left-hand side goes the BMW. The Porsche sees it coming and keeps him at bay, keeps him at arm's length for now. Through the whites, the final corner, down the pit straight for one more time with 6.5 minutes left in this race. Turn 1 going through, long right-hander riding on the nose of Jeremy de Boiva. You can just see how eager he is to get ahead of the Dutchman and on to the podium through the sweeper of turn 3. Very, very long left-hander. The outside tyres under a world of stress. Uphill now through the right of turn number 4 before you then battle down hill towards Moss Corner. And Jeremy De Boyver having a bit of a look. Not quite able to bridge the gap as much as they've liked. But again, that crucial run down the Mario Andretti straight. We're going to see here how he negotiates Moss. Through the right, is there a space opens up for the second apex? Very wide goes Ashraf Al Haddad. There's a car off the left-hand side as well that has hampered Jeremy De Boyver's momentum and allowing Ashraf Al Haddad to get the measure down the straight. Yeah, a lot of people have, but Jasper Charks has pushed on and trying to still get a podium. We've only got, I think, 4 cars running for the AMS. At least this is Eos Gimantas getting ahead of Harry Wills up in a P4. Harry Wills trying to come back at him through the S's. That might work. All get pinched through the back marker car as they run in towards the penultimate corner. Harry Wills using that outside momentum to swing himself back up the inside. Ashraf El Haddad knocked down to 5th. John Williams up in a 4th. How has he done that? But oh my word, what has happened to the Dutchman of Ashraf El Haddad? Was fighting with Jeremy De Boyver not too long ago for the podium. Turn 5, another victim. Moss is tricky. Oh, he spun it around again. Not collected anyone in his way. Rejoins relatively, very safely actually. I can't discredit that at all. But Ashraf El Haddad, another victim of Motorsport.
You say rejoining safely, but as we saw from that curb, I wouldn't be wanting to go anywhere near that. Also, just look at that list of DNFs right now. 5, 6 cars retiring from the race. Hermans, Kjellberg, Gardner, Reiter, Smart and Miller all out of just the pros. And again, it's just been such a difficult day. The race is Kurt Van Hoenicker going off the track there very briefly as well, as we've got just 3 minutes left to go. But here we go again. Ding ding, round 2. Harry Wills and Arius Gimantas.
Here we go. Once again in towards the final sector of the circuit. Harry Wills trying to push Gimantas through the left. They swing. You really do feel the weight shift in the car as you run your way through the right, then the left, then the right again. You really do swing from left to right in the car, and it must be a lot of fun to drive your way through, but you are putting a lot of lateral demand on the tyres, on the car itself, as the sheer inertia of the car really swings and ebbs and flows as you go through. It must be a very tricky circuit or sequence of corners to really nail. This circuit in general, as the weight of the car sort of again fluctuates as you go up and downhill, and of course the differing sort of styles of corners and things that we have here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, or better known as Motorsport. It's a fantastic venue, and honestly, for a circuit that I've not commentated on before at all, not really been familiar with until sort of this morning, I'm not disappointed.
It certainly packs a lot of punch, doesn't it? I mean, you get your value for money at a circuit like this, because it's about twice the distance of Knockhill, but it feels honestly like it could be maybe another little like a little mini Watkins Glen, just with how much straight line speed you get, but also how tight and twisty some of the corners are here.
For sure. I mean, the final sector does give me Road America vibes, kind of, just a little bit. I mean, the Mario Andretti straight, of course, the one that doesn't, they haven't got Canada Corner. It does give me that sort of vibe. It's got the fantastic elements of so many circuits, like we say, Knockhill, the undulating turn 1, and then, Watkins Glen. It's just an amazing circuit that, again, not intentionally takes so many different characteristics from so many different circuits and just blends it all into one. It is a great circuit, and while on paper, as we were talking about, it doesn't open itself up to many overtaken opportunities. People will find a way, and they have, whether it to be the outside or use momentum in different ways, not necessarily just sending it on the brakes. You can still get a move done, and it's been very, very impressive to see how this race has unfolded and how these people have negotiated themselves around the 2.5-mile circuit. And yeah, it's just really been a standout race for sure. I mean, again, as I said in the intro, this season sets the bar so high for itself, and week in, week out, it delivers on those standards. And it's just been so good that we go in to every single race expecting greatness, and we are never disappointed at all.
We really aren't. We've been so spoilt with all of the action that we've had from all of the races. On a different note, I'm going to make a very bold prediction here. Harry Wills actually fuel saving up until this final lap. I bet he's going to try and make a move here, but also John Williams onto the back of Jeremy De Boyver here.
Indeed, so John Williams, how has he been able to recover this into a potential podium now? To the outside, maybe, not quite having to tuck in, as we are very much under lights here at Motorsport for the final 30 seconds of this race. We might have one more lap. It all depends on Callum Beeman and when he crosses the line. It could be the final lap. 39.72 laps he's completed with just 20 seconds left to go. It's going to be very, very close at the line. I don't think he's going to be able to do it, but only time will tell. I think this might well be the white flag lap. We'll ride on board with Callum Beeman to see if he crosses and takes the checkered flag. It's going to be very, very close, a matter of seconds even. 49, 50, oh my word, he's made it. I think we've got one more lap left to go. White flag out, Callum Beeman, one more lap left to negotiate for him, and he'll tick it off for yet another race victory tonight for round number 8. But yeah, John Williams in that Pro-Am, on fire. I mean, he's been so misfortunate, but he's on the comeback.
He really, really is, and it's been a fantastic drive to watch. Enjoyed every single minute of it. The thing is that, I mean, you know, after the start that they had, you would never have imagined this sort of outcome for the remainder of the race, and yet here we are. And it just, I mean, it really does blow the doors wide open on this championship with just a couple of races left to go here, Zach. It's got to the point where I just cannot make any predictions on this whatsoever now. We've got Jeremy De Boyver fighting out with John Williams. You also got Gus Franken onto the back here of Jesper Tjerks as well. So it is definitely all to play for, but it's all been about this man here. Talk about opportunity knocking at your door. Callum Beeman has been absolutely sublime.
He has, and he'll tick it off through the final corner. He'll bring it to the right-hand side of the circuit to take the checkered flag for race 2 here at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Motorsport round 8, race 2 goes the way of Callum Beeman. Multiple seconds later will come Neil Butler to round off second place. A consistent night for him in his championship bid. Chris Chatterton takes the podium place with Eris Yamantas now coming through the final couple of corners, and will take P4, followed by Harry Wills. Unfortunately for him, was not able as he comes across the line in style with a nice little drift to round off the race. Not quite enough time lost to see him lose the place to Stuart Reynolds. Here comes Dean Timms now into the final sector as well. For him, it will be his first victory of this season, I'm pretty sure, in a season of up and downs for the reigning champion. He'll come through the final corner with a bit of lap traffic left to negotiate. He'll tick off and take the checkered flag for race 2 in the Pro-Ams, followed by Michael Patterman and Jeremy De Boyver. Ashraf El Haddad and John Williams to the line, though. El Haddad, I think, just going to be able to get it because John Williams left smoking in the background for 5th place. Might lose the place to Lucas Romano. I don't think that's going to be the case. He limps it back home for 5th and still ahead of his championship rival. These two are going toe-to-toe. James States took the victory for the AMS ahead of Dirk Boutz and Gus Franken in P3, with the Asper and Kurt Van Hohenacker your top 5. But wow, 2 pretty snazzy races, to put it in the bluntest way possible.
Yeah, look, that was an incredible race. They really all fought very hard for it. They fought a lot harder and for more of the race than I thought that they would. If you remember back to just before or just after the end of the first race, I thought they were going to have to really sort of push things, but I just did not expect that they were going to keep it going for what it was essentially 45 minutes.
This is how they rack up then after over 40 laps of racing action. Callum Beeman makes it 2 out of 2 for round 8. He takes victory ahead of Neil Butler and Chris Chatterton. Eris Yamantas and Harry Wills your top 5. Stuart Reynolds just in behind in P6. The best that he could have asked for in his championship bid. Kenny Harriman, Albin Kjellberg, a poor showing for the Swede. Unfortunate for him, and he is not going to be liking Canadian circuits in the future. A massive step back in his championship bid. Louis Gardner, Thomas Wright your top 10. Kieran Smart and Andy Miller round off the Pro 15. field. Neither of our bottom three actually doing more than 3 laps in this race. Dean Timms takes victory for the Pro-Ams, and Michael Patterman and Jeremy de Boer, a good showing for the Belgian. Ashraf El Haddad, John Williams coming to blows on that final lap. Come your top 5. Lucas Romano P6, the best he could have managed to salvage after a victory in race 1. Didier Vlaming just in behind in P7. Alex Bomberg, Francois Pedro and Edward Pack, your top 10. Liam Mahan and Stuart Vines round off the Pro-Am field. And finally, into the AMs, James States takes victory ahead of Dirk Bout, who makes it a double podium for him in that number 11. Gus Frank in your podium. Jasper Charles, Cam van Hohenacke 4 and 5. Craig Schill just in behind with Connor Botting 4 laps down in P7, but still ahead of his Prime Motorsport teammate of Lewis Boubier in P8. Johan Reigns, Navarro de Bueva. Top 10, Asta Hatcher there, the lone outside of the top 10 in P11. We are going to look at a couple of interviews, but just before that, David, just your thoughts on that race. That was pretty sublime.
Yeah, it was epic stuff. We really were spoiled with all the action that we got through there. I think some very worthy winners tonight, but again, I'm just so curious to see how this affects the championship here, Zach. The implications, I think, on this one are going to be absolutely profound. With just a couple of races left to go in the season, you know, we've got 2 more rounds after this, so 4 races after tonight. Yeah, it's now down to crunch time, and I think by the end of, or by the beginning of next time, in 2 weeks' time, because obviously we've got that drop week next week, we're going to have a firm idea who's challenging for this title.
For sure. I mean, already we've got a rough idea as to who's going to be where, but nothing set in stone just yet. We are going to take a word with James States, our victor in the AMS for race number 2. And well, James States, that was a pretty decent victory. I mean, it was a race of attrition amongst you AMS, not probably the race you guys would have wanted here at Motorsport, but definitely not a bad day in the office for you.
It's a very difficult track. The first race I can take the 2nd place. I don't want to pushing too hard. Just yeah, 2nd place. Dus I starting in the 2nd race from the 9th place. Then there was a lot of traffic. I have make a little bit a little fault. And I go back to the back, and yeah, I'm gonna make my pace again, and yeah, I won. I think it's a lot of happens in the race with everyone.
For sure, it was tricky for a lot of people. I mean, we've just rounded off round number 8. We only have 2 rounds left to go. Only 4 races left of this season. You came into today 4th in the championship. Are you still eyeing up a possible hope for a championship? What are your targets going into Bathurst and Daytona?
I hope I can go to the top 3. I hope so. But yeah, I see every race by race. You don't know, everything can go wrong, huh? You say today the 3rd position and the 2nd position in the championship yeah, is not good finish, then yeah, the points is very go wrong, huh? You need points, huh?
You do. That does help to win a championship is a few points. But yeah, definitely clear your ambitions and aspirations are for the final couple of races. We take a week off, then we go to Daytona. Are you feeling confident around Daytona?
Normally, I drive the year before on Daytona, and normally, yeah, it go good there, but it go very crazy also. Same like here a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah, well, best of luck to you, James, and fingers crossed you can get the results you want over the next couple of races. Just before we say goodbye to you, is there anyone else you want to say thank you to, bit of a shout out to on broadcast?
No, I want thanks all my teammates and everything. We are helping each other for the right corners. We take good braking, accelerating. This is very good with a good team to drive.
Yeah, for sure. It is always good to have that fantastic team dynamic. But of course, best of luck to you, James, and take care. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Ela.
Just while I kick David out of the commentary booth just for a second, I completely did not mean to do that. I do apologise. I was trying to drag James States out, but he did it himself. I got confused. But yeah, David, just to wrap up finally, it's It's all ending too quickly. It's like that run up to Christmas. You get all excited, and then boom, it's right in your face. You're like, wow, this happened a lot quicker than we were hoping.
That's exactly what happens here, and the problem with that is that it's gone before you even realise it. So much still to decide, and here's another interesting little tidbit that we haven't even thought about to talk about tonight. 2 weeks time we come back after the drop week, Zach, and we have got brand new GT3 physics to deal with. We have got the brand new GT3 update to get our heads round. How is that going to affect the final 2 weeks? That is going to be, I think, the biggest questions. There's always teething problems with these things, but how is that going to impact and potentially turn this upside down?
For sure. I mean, it's a big uncertainty. It's one that we're going to have to be thrown straight into the deep end with. And of course, for a lot of these drivers, they're going to have to do countless laps and hours of practice over the course of as soon as the iRacing servers are updated to get up to speed to adapt. But it could for sure shake up things quite dramatically, because again, it can be a big uncertainty. You are going into a big unknown, and it could mean that your car of choice has taken a big step back or a big step forward. You have committed to your car of choice. You can't change it without taking a pretty hefty penalty, and yeah, you have to go into the final 2 races with that car, with that machinery. And when we've got in the pros particularly, I mean, for the AMs, it's not so bad of a case because we've got 2 Audis leading the way, and then I think the 2 BMWs of Dirk Bounce and James States just in behind in 3 and 4. But for the pros, we have Neil Butler in the Porsche, Stuart Reynolds in the Mercedes, Albin Kjellberg in the BMW, 3 different chassis, all inside the top 3. And when it comes to the rework of the physics, they're going to be 3 completely different cars come the round number 9.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me so excited for it. It could just all turn on its head. It's been a fantastic season so far, and very much looking forward to that, and also to what comes next for World Series leagues.
For sure. Well, that is going to conclude all of our actions here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been myself, Zach Sweeney, alongside David Christie in the commentary booth for round number 8 of the IMB World Series Season 4 GT3 European Edition. Do stick around for a few hours' time if you are going to be awake for the Americans and how they handle the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and if they have a similar turn of events that we had here for the Europeans. But until next time, we'll see you in 2 weeks' time. We take a break week over week 13. We'll see you when we return in Daytona, the venue that saw our finale last season hosts the penultimate round of what has been a fantastic championship tale. And well, we are going to be in for a surprise. Hopefully we've got Ewan O'Leary back to talk us through all the action as well. But until then, ladies and gents, take care, and we'll see you soon.